What's up, everybody? Brett here, playing some more Total War Warhammer 2 multiplayer action. Today's going to be another 2v2 with me playing as the High Elves, and not just the High Elves, but Averlorn. My ally is going to be the Skaven, bit of a nombo there, and we're going to be up against the Lizardmen and the High Elves as well. So, an interesting matchup, and I try to keep it pretty flavorful. You know, I brought the Treemen, I've got some Dryads here, and I, of course, have the Everqueen's Kroq'gar, the Pure Main Company, and yeah, you see here I also have the Fireborn. I took lots and lots of Regiments of Renown, and let's go ahead and check this out. So we ended up corner camping. Pro strat, guys. It is a pro strat. So my ally here, the Skaven player, he went with 2 units of the Warp Lightning Cannons. And when someone goes for artillery on your team, you got to back them up, right? It's a 2v2. I originally was going to deploy here. He was going to deploy here. He took this kind of high ground position. I realized, you know, just how flimsy his defenses were, and that if we worked together, we would have a great chance of overcoming our opponents. Now, the Skaven artillery is no doubt going to be the longest ranged artillery on the field. So even if we saw, let's say, some Eagle Claw bolt throwers on this side, they would still have to come to us because our range would be superior. And even if we also saw some solar engines on this side of the battlefield, that they would also still have to come to us from the Lizardman perspective. The Lizardman does have the Stegodon with the artillery piece on it, which I almost always bring. I love those dudes. They're very accurate. Let's see. Let's get into the meat and potatoes of the army compositions. I have a pretty cheap but durable front line of Spearmen, mixed in with Dryads for some heavy hitting. They cause fear, and they have a physical resistance of 20%. And just mixing them in nicely, they can destroy skinks. They do very well against other high elf infantry, let's say just basic spearmen, and they'll trade decently with the White Lions, but the White Lions I think will win that handily. I have a backline, kind of a more of a mobile, go where I need to type of secondary line here with the Pure Main Company. I'm keeping him pretty high and tight with my Noble, who I am, you know, I didn't know how they were going to deploy, right? The Pure Main Company gives an aura of, you know, physical resistance. So starting off with my hero units gathered around, in case there's any type of sniping shenanigans, which is rare, very rare, I could keep them here for a little bit of extra physical resistance, and then I could keep them blobbed up in case I needed to cast an Earth Blood for healing. But my Noble is going to be rolling pretty deep with the Fireborn. Pretty amazing unit. They are anti-large. They are, of course, the Regiment of Renown for the Dragon Princes. Their stats are out of this world. They do flaming damage. They have a great 20% physical resistance as well as a 70% fire resistance and martial mastery. So as long as they have higher than 50% base HP, they get a ton of melee attack and melee defense, which makes them very powerful in sustained combat. And the Noble is also an anti-large specialist, so he pairs really well with that. He gives them that backbone of leadership and that hard armor-piercing anti-large punch with a 340 weapon strength. So I also take the Handmaiden of the Everqueen. I have her stripped down. I don't have any of her buffs for ranged units. She's a pretty beautifully designed unit as well, I have to say. And I like to take her on a horse, so she's more of a mobile, you know, light-ranged artillery platform at this point, with her missile damage being as high as it is. But she is able to do a lot of work from horseback. If you need her over here as an anti-large melee specialist, she can do that as well. She's kind of a more of a hybrid type of unit. And I'm going to keep her back here, firing away. You'll see I'm already moving forward with my infantry. I want to make a nice little defensive perimeter, create some space, because we're so tightly packed here that any type of wind spells could end up being potentially devastating on our lines. So I'm going to spread out. I'm going to, you know, force these engagements to happen here, because in addition to our Skaven artillery, I also have 3 units of archers as well. The Lothern Sea Guard, just with the spears, no shields. I didn't think that was necessary. I caught some costs in that way. They have lower range, but they are very good at protecting your flanks. And while they're not fighting in melee, they'll be shooting. Because in the center here, and this is the unit that I want to protect the most, because they may be one of the most high value units on our side of the battlefield, it's the Everqueen's Kroq'gars. So they're going to be, they shoot basically laser beams, guys. They have magic damage, fire damage, huge missile damage with tons of armor-piercing components. They have very good range, and if they have to fight in melee, they can certainly do that if needed. But they're going to be a huge component of my DPS for this battle. I also have the Keepers of the Flame up here. I'm going to hold these guys in deep reserve for almost the entire game. And the thing is with these guys, if they're nearly unbreakable, I mean, their leadership right now is at 113, which is, you know, above unbreakable stats. They cause fear. They have, do they also have 20% physical resistance? No, it's a 30% with 100 armor. And they also are considered shielded, which is amazing. That's actually, I don't know if I ever thought about that before. They do have bronze shields despite holding halberds. And when they die, they explode, the Mark of Asuryan. So they cause damage in an AoE around them to the units that kill them. Keeping them in reserve until most of the chaff is grinded up, until lots of the elite infantry on the other side of the battlefield is worn down, is going to be part of my strategy for this game. And also using them in any engagement where a large dinosaur gets through, and I need to kind of counter that. I have my Sun Dragon over here. We managed to jump on some Illyrian Reavers, I do believe. And we drove them off the battlefield pretty quickly. We also had these Gunner Runners with Slingers, the Poison variant, kind of Vanguard deployed here. And I brought my Dragon over, and we got some of the kills, and we pushed them right off the battlefield. Sorry, I missed that. But they were trying to get a nice little Vanguard deployment, and we were able to spot that quickly and shut that down. So lots of Clan Rats here in the front line for my ally. I like that. They're very cheap. They're not the shielded variant. They're just good meat shield units. But he also went with pretty heavy Storm Vermin play. So for those of you who've perhaps never seen a Storm Vermin, check these dudes out. They're pretty rad looking with their power metal mohawks. But they have good stats, good armor, and very good melee stats for how huge their unit models are. They have 160 units per grouping. And in the back lines, we have the Plague Monks. Physical resistance, very good at chewing through with their Frenzy. They can chew through light armored units, very good against Skinks, Spearmen, that sort of thing. And then a bunch of Storm Vermins with Halberds. So 2 units back here to help protect the artillery, no doubt. Lord Skrolk with his summons. Liber Bubonicus for a draining effect. He has lots of his spells. Stand Your Ground to provide some leadership to his little rat buddies. Pestilent Birth to summon the little rat's Plague for some area of effect damage. Yeah, he has like 3 different kinds of summons that he can do. It's pretty amazing. He also has the Warlock Engineer, who is one of my fan favorite type of picks. He took, looks like his entire kit, which I would not recommend. He has some things that aren't very valuable, but one of my favorite things to take on him is a Doom Rocket. You only get one, but it causes magical and fire damage, and if you can fire this into a blob, you'll get tons of kills. Howling Warp Gale would be very good against the flying units on the other side of the battlefield, and probably his most important thing is the Warpstone armor, which drains the health of any enemies around him. And whenever he casts, he applies melee attack and leadership debuff map-wide. It's pretty insane. He also provides bonuses to the artillery that he's nearby, which is, I'm sure, what he's being mainly used for. Some Deathglow Bombardiers here in the back, as well as a Poison Wind Globadier. So kind of covering all bases here. These are the anti-large variant. You'll see they're green. They have a bit of a green color scheme. And these are the armor-piercing anti-infantry variant, and you can see they have that kind of purple color scheme. And then, I guess last but not least here, we have the Hell Pit Abomination, who's going to be able to go fisticuffs with any type of, you know, Carnosaur, Bastillodon type unit and beat the living crap out of it. It has regeneration. It causes terror, of course. It also has Too Horrible to Die, so it has a chance of gaining, you know, a ton of hit points if it drops below 10% HP instead of dying. And then when it does die, some Skaven slaves pop out of it and can help, you know, kind of defend you in that way. So, yeah, this whole time, nothing but Warp Lightning raining down on our poor opponents. They're trying to scoot forward with their Lothern Sea Guard to try and perhaps skirmish us a bit while their White Lions advance. Just a solid line of White Lions, some Phoenix Guard out on the flanks, the Sisters of Avalorn in one side, and the Fireborn mixed with some Silver Helms. I like that strategy a lot, using a slightly cheaper cavalry unit in conjunction with a more expensive one. Let them take the hits, the charges, and then clean up with the Fireborn. That's a great strategy, because at the end of the day, they do most of the damage. So one Sisters of Avalorn is enough to burst down just about any unit in the game, given enough time. So I don't hate that pick as a kind of a solo thing. And it's pretty smart not to put them up here with this group, because I've dove down with my Sun Dragons, picked up 7 kills. These Lothern Sea Guard really aren't long for this world. For his hero core, he has a mage with the Lore of Life on a chariot, which makes them kind of a viable melee combatant. I'll see there, you know, they have Earth Blood for that AoE healing. Also, Dwellers Below, which in a 2v2 can get an absurd number of kills. It used to be overpowered at one point. And then Awakening of the Wood for some easy damage, but it also triggers Life Bloom, which gives passive regen to everything on their side of the battlefield. And then for their another kind of alternate spellcaster with Earthblood. I don't know why you need two sources of Earthblood. Bit of a, I would say, a mispick there. Spells can be expensive. If you can cut spells, you should always do it. But the Lore Master is one of my favorite units as well on the High Elf side of the battlefield. They, once again, they function in that dual role, right? They're a spellcaster and a powerful melee combatant. And just stripping them down so that they have a single Earthblood spell, that's something that you'll see. It's pretty common. And then Tyrion here on foot, very interesting. He's powerful on foot, but he's even more powerful on his horse. He's incredibly fast and a great duelist. He has Feint and Riposte. Check that out. Physical resistance, melee defense, melee attack. That makes him quite strong. And then the Heart of Avalorn. So if he drops below 20% HP, he has a chance of receiving, it's usually about 1,000 HP. It's a huge heal, and it procs quite a bit. So let's see if that comes into play this battle. I'm not sure if it does. I don't quite remember. And then the last thing that we need to go over here is going to be the Lizardmen army. So they're pushing forward. They have a very versatile unit here in the Skink cohorts with Javelins. They function as standard Skinks, but they also have 3 ammunition of poisonous missiles. They don't do a ton of damage, but with sheer volume of fire, you know, there's 3 groups here. If they all shoot at the same target, let's say my Dryads, who are not, you know, shielded, they do have physical resistance and some armor, but they're not shielded compared to the silver shields of a Spearman. If those 3 units focus fire all their ammunition into one unit, they'll kill it. I mean, almost guaranteed. These 3 units with all their ammunition could probably drive off the Spearman, and then they would still be some very functional, you know, high unit number melee units that are pretty decent. You know, they have 60 leadership, which is kind of their Achilles heel. They break pretty easily, but they almost always come back. And with the support of these Kroq'gars here mixed in amongst them, they take the damage, and the Kroq'gars deal the damage with their giant, almost like building implements that are converted into weapons of war. And that's kind of how their lore is. They're more like construction dinos that in times of need, they strap weapons to them and force them into combat. And yeah, they're also visually one of the most badass looking units in the Lizardman roster. They're just giant crocodiles on 2 feet. You gotta love that. And then you'll see lots and lots of Saurus with shields. Some chevrons in some of them. That's kind of surprising. Saurus warriors with shields, Saurus warriors with shields. So just a pretty powerful frontline punch. Would stand toe-to-toe with anything on the Skaven side of the battlefield, and will definitely melt through mine if my frontline is not well supported. Some Pterodon Riders with the Fire Leech Bolas going to be up in the air. They can drop rocks, which is an ability you don't get to see very often, but when it happens, it's pretty funny. Small strike area, doesn't usually ever kill anything. But they're going to be getting in here if they can without getting, you know, bursted down. But they're looking for a home. They're looking for a way to get into the back line and just throw those fire bombs unimpeded. And they can do a lot of damage if they're allowed to just sit and do that. There's also one Bastiladon with the solar engine on his back, going to be shooting those bright yellow laser beams. Anytime you see that thing go off, it's probably getting a kill or two. At the end of the day, it's still a Bastiladon, so even if they're not able to make use of it as an artillery piece, they'll almost certainly be able to use it as just a large dinosaur. What else? What else do we have going on? We have some Pharaoh Cold Ones. I like that choice. They're very cheap. If they can get up and around, they can cause a lot of havoc in the lines. And they're mixed with the Cold One Riders, who are just the infantry chewing type. They don't have spears. They have these kind of like, you know, Aztec-style swords and maces. And they're going to be good if they can use the Pharaoh Cold Ones to take that initial charge into spearmen, things like that. Let them get rampaged, and then try and shoot the gap with the Cold One Riders. That's kind of a good strategy in general. You'll notice also that I pulled back some of my infantry units. I noticed that we're doing a ton of damage on the approach here, and I want to prolong their approach as long as possible. So I pulled back my front line, kept them a little bit higher and tighter. There's one Pharaoh Carnosaur on the battlefield as well, who's quite the monster. We don't have really any large units that he can fight that'll be advantageous. It's a pretty even match between the Hell Pit Abomination and the Pharaoh Carnosaur, but I think the Hell Pit does win in the end. And then we also have here Kroq'gar on Grimlock being held in reserve so that he doesn't become the focus of some Warp Lightning fire, no doubt. And then last but not least, the Skink Priest with the Lure of Beasts. So able to summon some Manticores into our backlines. I'm sure that'll be the play. We'll see if he's able to do that at all. I'm sending my Sun Dragon here over the hills and through the woods to try and take out this mage with the Lure of Life on a chariot. Pretty easy target here. The Lothern Sea Guard are firing in. They're going after my Fireborn, which is an interesting choice. They have 100 armor plus bronze shields. The Solar Engine is now shooting into my Everqueen's Court Guard. And they're going to be shooting. It looks like I'm trying to take out the Feral Carnosaur, which is not a bad choice. And right now, I am choosing my engagements, right? I'm trying not to just throw all my units into one giant blob. I'm using my Dryads to try and fight the Saurus Warriors. The Spearmen are trying to go in on the Feral Carnosaur. And now I'm switching my Sisters of Avalorn Fire onto the Phoenix Guard. That physical resistance is going to be bypassed by the magic damage. And I should be able to crush them pretty nicely. My Fireborn are going to charge in versus the White Lions, and they're going to get some good damage. I'm going to make sure they're healed. You'll see here the Star of Avalorn going off. This Manticore was summoned in the back line, but kind of forgotten about. Alarielle is just going to be tucked in high and tight in his pocket. I didn't really go over her, but I'm assuming, you know, if you are familiar with Total Warhammer 2, you kind of know her deal. She heals. So I took Regrowth, I took Banishment as well, which is going to help me rack up a lot of kills this game. And I'm going to be using Earthblood as much as I can on this side of the battlefield and the other. Trying to get as many units as I can as well. We want to keep our Fireborn in tip-top shape so that their Martial Mastery stays active. I'm using my Lothern Sea Guard here in melee to try and tie down these Feral Cold Ones, and as well as these Spearmen. And I'm noticing that we're losing because these Fire Leech Bolas are over here tossing into the back lines. So my Sisters of Avalorn just have so much work to do this game. Spearmen are coming back from routing. This Manticore, like I said, kind of forgotten about. The Skaven player has tons and tons of powerful infantry in the form of the Storm Vermin, so getting them into battle is going to be great. You see here he's marching them out from his reserve positions. My Lothern Sea Guard moved out to this side to try and, you know, take pot shots at whatever they can. I'll be trying to counter skirmish these Lothern Sea Guard, which is exactly what I'm doing here. But here we go. The Skink cohorts threw all of their javelins. My Banishment goes off into this huge blob of Lizardmen. Let's check out Alarielle and see just how much kills. 136 kills. All of these units are now rampaging. We can go into the pits and watch the fighting. Kroq'gar joining the Feral Carnosaur and trying to take out my Treeman. He's been cursed. The curse of Andraer, lowering his stats. I can't believe I forgot to go over my Treeman. Get out of here, man. And I'm using him basically right now as a tank. He's losing pretty terribly thanks to those debuffs. My Sisters of Avalorn are sniping out the Skink Priest with the Lure of Beasts. I wanted him off the battlefield ASAP. Good targeting here for my ally, using his Chain Lightning to take out that Bastiladon. That one piece of artillery, getting that off the battlefield gives us free reign. And a beautiful breath attack here, straight down the line for my Sun Dragon. Going to be roasting lots of these Lothern Sea Guard. He's up to 117 kills, and once again I see an opportunity to kind of goon out this healing mage, and I'm going to make sure I take it. Another big Star of Avalorn going off here, trying to keep my Treemen up. They don't do the best damage. They have 100 armor though. They do magic damage, so they bypass physical resistance, which is relevant against Kroq'gar. But the main thing is right now with their huge HP pools, they're going to tank a lot of this damage. And now the Warp Lightning is going in on the Feral Carnosaur, and we're going to be taking them out. The Everqueen's Court Guard forced to engage in melee here, and they're not pushovers in melee. They are Regiments of Renown, so they're rank 9. So at the very least, their stats are pretty powerful. 54 kills is great considering they've been firing at high-value targets this whole time. I saw a break in the line, and I moved forward with my Keepers of the Flame to patch up that break, but then I also noticed that we were just straight up winning. So I decided just to go ahead and throw them in melee. Lore Master of Hoeth here fighting. I just kept my Noble and my Fireborn in melee this whole time. I never pulled them out. I didn't use their massive charge bonus of 80% because at the end of the day, they were the only thing at the time holding down this entire flank force against all of these White Lions. And with just enough healing support, they were able to function as just really powerful, almost, you know, in the way I used them, they were like really powerful, almost great sword style units. And they're just sitting in there grinding it out with infantry. And with the support of a Noble, the Sun Dragon here getting a bit of a rear charge, and now we have Storm Vermin helping us. We were able to hold that whole flank and keep our artillery well protected. So here we go. It's the beginnings of the end. Kroq'gar still fighting valiantly against my Treemen. The Hell Pit Abomination and a Treeman fighting side by side to take down Kroq'gar. That's not something you get to see every day. The Puremain Company, 30 unit models still alive, doing their best. But I've got the Keepers of the Flame on Kroq'gar now. They're an extremely powerful unit. They have great armor-piercing anti-large values, and that's going to be it. So I missed my second banishment, which is something that I want to show you guys, and I probably missed a few breath attacks as well. But I think I gave you the gist of the game. I think my second banishment ended up giving me something like 40 kills, and it was just another really powerful banishment. So at the end of the day, had that game been a little bit swingier, you know, had it gone either way, I love keeping my Keepers of the Flame in reserve. I think that was a good strategy. Had it come down to a grind fest, having a nearly unbreakable, highly damage resistant unit in your back pocket can be game changing. And since we weren't threatened, I didn't need to use them. Breath attacks and banishments. I mean, between my Sun Dragon and my, the casting of Alarielle, that one spell, that one banishment, almost 300 kills. That's a lot of value. You'll see here the Fireborn did a great job just grinding it out. Everqueen's Kroq'gar, at the end of the day, they got about 20 of these kills in melee versus cavalry, so they did a great job. And the Spearmen and the Dryads just held the line like they were supposed to do. My allies' Warp Lightning Cannon play was excellent. They were on good targets pretty much the entire game. Lord Skrolk, didn't really get to see him, go to work, but he summoned lots of units. Yeah, he did very well. And the Warlock Engineer was kept in reserve, kind of hugging the artillery pieces to boost their damage. And then the Hell Pit Abomination went toe-to-toe with Grimlock and came out, alive at the very least. Let's look over at the Lizardman player, RGM12. Kroq'gars were in there beating up on my Spearmen and beating up on rats, grinding for most of the game. Mixed in amongst Saurus and the Skink cohorts, they're very, very survivable, and they're able to dish out a ton of damage. Getting rid of the Skink Priest before he was able to get his full value for most of the game, he did cast the Curse of Onrare, which almost allowed them to goon out my Treemen, and he did manage to summon 2 Manticores. So, I mean, I guess he did get his value, but one of those Manticores was forgotten about until ultimately I sniped it, and, by then it was degenerating, so it was pretty much off the battlefield. So potential, don't look at these 2 kills and think that it didn't do anything. Those Manticores properly used could each get 20, 30 kills, or just be sat onto a caster and, chased off the battlefield. Something like that. There's lots of value to be gained, even if it's not in the form of pure kills. The Bastiladon, able to get 43 kills before being sniped out, not bad. And then the Pharaoh Carnosaur did great as well. The poor White Lions were just overwhelmed. They're an awesome unit if you can mix them in amongst Spearmen. Let the Spearmen take the damage and let the White Lions do the damage. I also was able to just burst down the Phoenix Guard with my Sisters of Avalorn. Probably did almost all of that damage single-handedly to these Phoenix Guard. Bypassing, knowing your matchups, knowing that I could bypass the physical resistance with the Sisters of Avalorn's magic damage, made it kind of a no-brainer, easy choice for me. Same would have been said about their Fireborn, which we were able to pretty easily dumpster. 14 kills on them compared to our 67. Not quite a fair trade. They also had Shadow Warriors, which I guess I missed. You know what? It was the Shadow Warriors, not Illyrian Reavers. I was confusing them at the beginning of the game with the Silver Helms, which I saw later. But no, there were Shadow Warriors deployed right next to us, and they were only able to get 7 kills on some Gutter Runners before the game really started. Not sure if that would have made any difference. The Lore Master might have been better deployed with the Lizardmen. Let him stand amongst his Lizardmen friends and just cast Earthbloods on Saurus. That's a pretty good use of his abilities. And he wants to be wherever the infantry fighting is hottest. Let him tank some damage. Let him deal some damage with his great sword. But having him, thrown into the mix against, the Fireborn, it's not going to be the best use of his abilities. They have high physical resistance, high armor, and their cavalry size, so he doesn't get any type of infantry bonus. And then for most of the battle, I was able to kind of goon out and zone the Mage with the Lore of Life. I'm sure he got some healing, but Tyrion only getting 8 kills, I would probably say this is mostly because of his being on foot. At the very least, if you get your Lord into a negative fight, You know, you throw Tyrion into a fight with cavalry, let's say, or a bunch of chaff units like clan rats that he may not really want to be fighting. If he's on a horse, at least he can pull out quickly and go to the other side of the battlefield where he may be needed the most. And with Feint and Riposte, he makes a pretty powerful 1v1 duelist. Could have been trying to go after Alarielle the Radiant for the entire battle. That would have been, you know, I didn't even think about this at the time, but if you guys know the lore, Tyrion's kind of secretly, but not secretly, Alarielle the Radiant's lover. She's, of course, the queen of the High Elves, and that's not supposed to be a thing. But anyway, so having him hunt her down and beat her to death with his sword probably would have been anti-lore, so I'm not sure if I can get behind that. But anyway, guys, thank you to my opponents, Mirith and RGM12, as well as my ally, Clark in the Park After Dark. I just noticed that name. I can't believe that. That's a good one. Anyway, thank you guys for being good sports and the good gameplay. I hope you you find this on YouTube one day and watch it. Guys, thank you so much for watching. Once again, my name is Brett. My channel is Good Talk Gaming. I just hit 100 subs. And if you're out there watching and you've been watching my videos all this time, I want to thank you for that, for being a part of that. And that's it. That's all I got for you today. And I will see you in the next one. Take care.